Excellent. Good morning, everybody. This is the duly noticed meeting of the Advisory Committee of Non-Voting Taxpayers of Nantucket. It is Saturday, the 7th of September, and it's a minute or two after 10 a.m. in the morning, East Coast time. Just a warning to everybody who is going to participate by video that this is being video recorded. If your video is on and you have anything in the room that you'd rather people not see, either remove that or turn your video off, and therefore your privacy will be maintained. So let's first have the membership count. I can't see who is in the room, so would each person in the room who is a member of the committee, in an orderly manner, announce who they are and that they're present.
Aaron, Lynn Filipski,
Gene Briskman,
Peter Kahn,
Scott Olm,
Steve Perlman,
Michael Cody,
Gary Beller.
Patty Dorster.
Good. And it's Peter Halley here, and I can see Donna Martino and Donald Green. So I think by my count, we have a quorum and we can proceed. Was that somebody just sound like they needed to say something? Is there anybody else that we have not heard from who's a member of the committee? Apparently not. Okay, so then the first item is there a motion to approve today's agenda?
So moved.
And you just have to speak up because I can't obviously see anybody in the room who's making a motion.
So moved.
second.
Okay, and second. It's been moved and second that the agenda for today's meeting be approved. All those in favor signify by, okay, any nays? The ayes have it. The next item is the approval of the minutes that were circulated. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting?
So moved.
And a second?
second,
Second. All those in favor, shout out aye.
aye,
Anybody opposed? Nobody's opposed, so the minutes are approved. And so let's then get on to the agenda, which the first item is the update on the town council study committee and exactly where this sits today. I think there've been 2 meetings since our last meeting, or at least 1 meeting. Yeah. So go on, Donna.
okay, good morning all. The town council is about 50% through composing a new town charter. What we've agreed to is, or what we've proposed, 9 town councilors serving 3-year terms elected at large. Those who were inquiring, we've decided elected at large is the best way to go. We're trying to keep everything more or less the same if we can. So most elected boards and committees remain as they are. Town councilors would also act as county commissioners. The town councilor will be sitting as a liaison on school committee, and they haven't decided the NP and the EDC, who does planning director report to. There are things in the works, but the important thing is that we're 50% along the way. In terms of PR, Jeff Carlson is setting up an email for input and response from the public, which is very important. And someone who is Florencia Rulo, and I understand she's in charge of outreach for town manager and government. She has been requested by Libby to create PR, advertisements, articles, and information to be disseminated to wire services and the INCI. There's going to be a select board update possibly on September 18th, and our chair is going to present it to the select board. Libby has asked that we request support from the select board and to make it a select board warrant. I think that's it. And then we're delivering the draft charter to KP Law as soon as possible. Are there any questions about what we're doing so far?
Yeah, I have a question.
May I forgot to add, Peter, could I continue?
Sure.
There's one more important thing. We are scheduling 2 public forums to give the island voters the opportunity to ask questions, voice their opinions, and get input. And the dates are already set. Saturday, October 5th at 10, and Thursday, October 10th at 5:30. So they hopefully are 2 convenient times for folks. And all voters, residents, whomever are welcome to attend these public outreach meetings. That's it at
So
the
that
moment.
gives me 2 questions then. On the public outreach meetings, are they in person or are they hybrid? In other words, you know, will non-voting taxpayers be able to speak if indeed there's anything to speak about?
That's an important question, and I will raise it and will request it.
Okay.
Because right now it's in person, so we'll definitely request hybrid format.
So then that get, I'm sorry.
Our next meeting of ACNBT is October 5th at 10. So.
Yeah.
So
Well-
maybe we can be joint, I don't know how we should handle that.
Totally separate meetings.
Yeah.
This conflict.
So I,
Go there.
We can postpone us for a week.
Yeah, we can go there.
Yeah.
Kipper's the following Saturday.
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
yeah, all of a sudden the sound from the trailer is diminished. We can hear you, but it's kind of background noise.
So what did you suggest or say, Kathy?
Okay, so.
I think what Kathy said was that our next meeting is the 5th at the same time as the first public meeting. And so that, you know, draws into question, you know, I'm not sure that matters or not if there are 2 meetings where at the second meeting we could participate. If we can't participate at all, then it doesn't matter really. And if we can, we can then use our own meeting on the 10th to formulate any concept of participation that we want to have. It's always, it's better to get the first word in rather than the last word in, or actually best to get both in. But I guess I'm just raising I am concerned too that the 5th is a day that we're going to meet and they're going to meet, and whether that has any, you know, meaningful impact on whatever position we might take.
I have 2
In
questions.
which case,
Can you hear me? Hi.
I can barely hear you. Yeah.
2 questions. Donna, what was the thought process in having 9 members? And what about their makeup in terms of at large?
She said they're all at large.
They're all at large.
Right, which I think is a
Yeah.
huge detriment to that success. I think you want areas to be represented, and there's very different areas in the island. So what was the thought process?
Patty and members, I believe it's because it's actually they determined Joe Grouse also meets the following Monday after we meet. So he has basically 2 meetings every other week. And this was discussed with Collins Institute and and other folks. As far as, I think it's easier, and I think what may happen is that people from Sconset, if there's somebody from Sconset who is interested in running, people will band behind them. It might just kind of settle out that way. I have a feeling it will, because if we start designating areas, it gets very complicated. And the whole idea that we have as a committee is to make it as seamless as possible. And if something has to be tweaked, we can do it
But
down the line.
I think that's a very valid point, but for instance, Sconset really disappears in the wintertime. They don't really have a voice at the table in terms of at-large person. And it would be good to have somebody with that interest. It comes just like we have now, us versus them, you know, nobody's representing Sconset, because I look at this committee, at this new form of government as a representative form of government. And at large, it's very cumbersome to figure out what your constituents want when you're at large.
Well,
let me just, can I address
Go ahead,
this a second,
Peter.
Donna? Because this is something that I believe, Donna, we discussed somewhat briefly in our meeting with Joe, the kitchen table meeting, I'll call it.
Yes.
And
a lot of good things happen
I
at
think
kitchen
there's,
table.
yeah, and at that time, they still hadn't focused on exactly how many or whether it would be at large or not. But there was a concern that the only way to go would be at large because of the size of the island, which is very small, and the population is very unequally distributed. The full-time voting population is very unequally distributed through the communities on the island, number one. And number two, and really number two is, I think, the number one issue, is that these are virtually full-time jobs, these the town council member jobs, and they have a hard time enough getting 5 people who can commit the time and energy to doing this work, and they're very concerned that they can't get more. And then if you subdivide the island and into communities, how do you allocate the voting power unless you're going to do one person, one vote, at which point you have to start drawing crazy lines on the island to get 9 equal, geographic areas and so on and so forth. And so going back to, I think, the point that Donna was making, this is the simplest way to get a functioning town council. And if over time it appears that there is some kind of terrible imbalance in how people are represented, then we go through the process again, I guess,
Yes.
and improve it. But so this is not it's kind of not a search for perfection. It's a search for something that's better than what we have currently.
But I really believe that our non-voters need to have a representation, and I thought this new form of government,
That's
not gonna happen.
Why should we?
I believe that is what the whole point is to have a representative form of government. And it doesn't, you can't vote, but you can go to your representative and talk. And I think a representative is much more engaged.
Okay,
with
so let me just
defined.
Yeah, under Massachusetts law, there is no legal path to non-residents voting in Massachusetts elections without a change in Massachusetts law to permit that. We looked at this, and indeed, I think Donna and I discussed that. I can't remember whether the entire committee discussed this in the past, but currently there is no legal. In other words, if this committee proposed a town charter, giving non-residents a vote and send it to the Attorney General. And even if the Attorney General approved it, it would still be contrary to Massachusetts law.
But that's.
There
maybe
has to be a
it's-
fundamental, excuse me, there has to be a fundamental change in Massachusetts law to do that. And that is not going to be proposed by this committee. And I doubt that there is the voting will amongst the voting residents of this town to adopt a charter providing such a
But there's no.
such a change.
I don't think there's any confusion about that. I believe that, so there is no vote for non-voters. There's no question that we are not asking for that. But I believe that if you have a representative form of government, at least you would have a representative as a non-voter because you live here. You could go to that representative. You can't vote. Which takes me to the next point is at this meeting on the 5th, if we can't be there or talk, I believe we do have a right to send letters or
Who said you
talk
can't talk?
at
Yeah.
town meeting.
Patty, who said you can't talk?
You can't talk at town meeting.
But this is a public outreach. This is not a town meeting
No, but they don't
on
know.
October 5th.
A couple minutes ago, they said they weren't sure
That-
that we would be able to talk.
That's
Not-
rubbish. That's rubbish. Of
Okay.
course we can talk.
Who said that?
Public outreach meeting is public outreach.
No, she said.
She said that you couldn't,
She didn't know.
she
but
didn't
I-
know.
I'm
and
not
she
too
was
worried
gonna
about
ask.
that.
I'm
I
just
didn't-
saying, we could at least speak or have a letter for that, because we are allowed to do that.
It's a public meeting run by the town.
Right, everybody.
It has to be open.
Yeah,
We don't
everybody
need
can
to
talk.
ask that
Well,
question.
Donna didn't
May
say,
I? No, I didn't say we can't, I never said we can't speak. What I did, it turns out it's the same date as our next meeting. However, Peter Halley raised the idea of hybrid, and I'm going to talk to Joe on Monday about doing hybrid. Now, we have to decide as a committee, do we want to meet concurrently on Saturday, October 5th at 10? Do we want to open it up and make it so that we attend, quote unquote, the public outreach meeting instead? Or do we want to change the date of our next meeting?
Before we answer that question, there might be a solution to the dilemma here. If a non-voting taxpayer is non-voting, couldn't they be a member of this committee, just non-voting? So you'd have 10 members rather than 9, one of which couldn't vote, so you'd still have the,
They've already rejected.
They're not gonna
they've
change.
already rejected
They
that.
feel that's too
Yeah,
controversial.
they've already, the committee has already
It
rejected that.
wouldn't pass the state legislature.
Okay,
Can I-
thank you.
two-
I can't hear.
Two questions. One, what is the second date, October 5th, and what's the second?
Well,
The second date is Thursday, October 10th at 5:30.
All right,
So it's convenient for the population, we hope. Folks who are working can come Saturday or Thursday evening
So we
at
could-
5:30.
All right, so we could attend, those of us who want to contend either one of those if we feel like it. I have the second question going substantively. What was the rationale for 9? I'm just curious. It's a big number. It's, we only have 5 now. What was behind that?
Okay, we chose 9 because it's a better representation. There are more people involved, there will be more opinions, and there will be better discussions rather than just 5. And if somebody or 1 or 2 people happen to be away or ill, we can still move forward with decisions and the process.
I think the terms go
Staggered?
staggered. and
Three,
then-
three, three.
yeah, So that's the way it works.
I can't hear.
Oh, sorry, Donna, I assume it's because it's also staggered terms and 3 people every year would be up for reelection.
Yes.
Yeah.
9 counselors serving 3-year terms every 3 years.
I think
Yeah.
that having 9 or even 11 is the more the merrier, because it provides smaller groups within the town to have representation. For example, the Brazilian community, if it chose to get behind one person who was running, they could elect maybe be in 9th place and get a vote. If there were only 5, then it's very unlikely that the smaller communities like the El Salvadorian or the Brazilian communities could get represented. the more,
Well-
I think,
It's only gonna be 3 at any given time.
Yes, but one of the 9 could be.
if they all get elected the first time, it'll be all 9. That's the way it's done, because that's the way.
So if I'm sorry, I missed that. What is the question?
Question, I guess,
Uh,
I think is how are you gonna appoint the 9? Is it gonna take are you gonna take the existing select board and roll that?
Well, there's an election, it's an election.
Well, that's.
There's going to
Is
be,
it gonna be all 9 at one time, or is it gonna be staggered 3-year terms?
Yeah. The way
It's gonna be-
done-
Some for 3-year,
Can you let
some
Donna
for 2-year
answer?
terms, some for
Everybody,
1
let
year.
Donna answer.
Let Donna answer the question.
it's going to be 9. We have discussed moving the select board members over. That has not been decided yet. And actually, the select board has to decide if they want to do that as a whole or as individual members of the select board. And as far as 9, as far as the different communities, of 1 or 2 of the 9 could be Brazilian, whatever groups, there's enough. 11, we thought was too many, just to answer something that I think I heard. They decided 9 was better than 5, 11 would be too many in terms of making decisions and meetings. And as far as non-voting taxpayers, and I was very vocal about this, as Peter knows, they definitely, we are not legally able to vote. However, with the town council that we've proposed, we have the ability to talk to our town councilor. And if we don't like what the town councilor is doing, we can have some effect on somebody else coming in and running. That's our democracy. And the other thing is, we have to remember that because we would have regular town council meetings, one can go and attend a town council. And also, Peter Halley, to your point, I'm going to request that we also see if we can make it hybrid, if that doesn't create too much of a problem. I don't know. But I think the hybrid will help us a lot. So we do have a voice, but it's a different route. We cannot legally vote if we're non-voting taxpayers.
I have a question. Don't all 9, if this is passed, don't all 9 members of the town council represent everyone? So it's not like you have your own.
Right.
It's like we can go and, I mean, I understand what you would like to have happen, Patty, but I don't think that's gonna happen. So you have access to 9 different people.
Yeah. That's a good point. It actually is more evenly distributed.
Well,
Oh,
just to be
we'll
clear,
see.
Don Green.
Donna, you used the term our representative. I want to make sure everybody understands. We do
Chair
not,
has recognized me to speak, please.
hold on a second. We do not have a representative. But what Steve is saying,
When I'm saying our, I mean us, Nantucketers.
Yes, you're speaking to the chair, and I just did, and he recognized me. So may I talk, please?
Go.
Go ahead.
Number 1, the representatives should have a pledge that they do represent the whole island. Number 2, there are newspapers and other means of media to voice your opinion. And as Donna said, you can go to these meetings and will be allowed to speak. So we can't have a vote because the law in Massachusetts is you have to live in a place 6 months and 1 day. The other thing is, it is not constitutional to have 2 places where you are a resident. You have to have a legal resident, and the other ones are not, because it would screw up our voting system. So that's what I have to say. And also about money should not be how voting rights are determined. Some people don't have a lot of money. And they should, the rights should be determined on something else. And the Massachusetts wisdom has chosen 6 months and a day.
Okay, so let me just, a couple of questions, Donna, and you may not be able to answer these, but in this discussion, it struck me that in addition to settling on 9 people, nine town councilors. Another question is, what is the quorum going to be? Is it going to be 5? Or is it going to be, a majority of those available that day? We've dealt with quorum issues ourselves. I assume it's going to be 5, but I think the quorum size is going to be an important issue that probably will be addressed in the charter. It's something to think about. The other question is the following. Apparently, approximately 50% of the charter, the proposed charter, has been discussed and probably not agreed upon, but there's some general consensus of this committee that 50% is at least a partial first draft of this document. And is that available yet, or will partial drafts become available? Because we had the experience in the short-term rental working group, I think, where there were a lot of very good drafting sessions, and then when the draft came out, it didn't necessarily represent what everybody thought they'd agreed to. How is that being handled? Because it's also hard for us to make any comments without seeing actual words.
If I may, it's going to KP Law. And after that, then it would be up to the committee and KP Law to disseminate it. Right now, we can't really do it because KP Law hasn't reviewed it.
Okay, and presumably that has to be done. In other words, it has to go through KP Law review and then be re-reviewed by the committee prior to October 5th. Because otherwise, how do you have a discussion about something that people have opinions about rather than the something on which their opinions are supposedly based? Okay, so I guess it'll be published at some point. It's all very complicated, especially if it's going to become a select board warrant article.
As you know, we have a very ambitious schedule and we're trying to keep to it. And so far we're on schedule.
Okay, so the last thing, as I think we discussed, and as I heard, one of the issues that has been discussed by the committee, the Town Council Study Committee, is the continuation of elected boards as is. And so we have appointed boards then, and I'm wondering what has happened, because we are an appointed board and we are appointed by the town manager, not by the select board. And as we discussed, I think with Joe and amongst ourselves, one of our ideas is that when all is said and done, this committee and committees like it continue in the, under the new charter and continue in the bylaws. Has there been any discussion of that?
The bylaws, not yet. I think that would be ancillary. That's next. The main thing is to get we're on a deadline and we have to get this proposal onto the warrants, as Kathy had mentioned, and or approval, I guess, to schedule it for the annual town meeting. And then we'll go through the rest. We're trying to do the big picture and then itemize everything else.
Yeah. And is it clear in what has been drafted so far that non-voting taxpayers will have the right to address this town council at public meetings in the future? Or is that still up in the air? Yeah.
As concerned residents, we will have the ability to speak at town council meeting.
Taxpayers.
Yes, taxpayers,
We're not
residents,
residents.
concerned citizens, we will be able to address our town councilors. We will be able to address meetings. And we will be able to participate in committees and on boards. Well, boards, I don't know the legality of boards, but committees, yes. And so please forgive me, you, Peter,
no.
Not governing bodies, but.
not governing bodies, but other committees which report to governing bodies. So we can participate.
Donna,
Okay.
you know, the most important thing that, in my view, that you were talking about would be I happen to be very positive about the whole town council approach and the fact that anyone will be able to address them on their monthly meetings. But you mentioned that you weren't sure whether they would be, the meetings would be hybrid meetings. So that would be extremely useful for the seasonal people who are generally not here in, December, January, February, March, when there will be several meetings of the town council. Now, if someone really is concerned about an issue, it would be nothing to stop them from calling any of these people on, writing or calling to any of the members of the town council, any of the 9. And they don't necessarily have to do it at their monthly meeting. But having it hybrid would facilitate that because there are so many people that are away here. The seasonal people are obviously away in the winter months. And that would make it easier for us to get our views. But I'm frankly thrilled with the fact that at least when we're on island, all of us will be able to speak to these members of the town council every time they meet while we're on island. It would be better if it was hybrid as well, so when we're off island, we could do the same thing.
I agree. And that is something that Peter Howley, Peter
Yeah.
Howley had suggested it. And I think we would do it for the public outreach and then have this added somewhere that meetings should be hybrid.
And Libby likes it.
Yeah, the select board.
Yeah,
is
and
all-
go to, we have,
I go to them every week. I'm on them.
could somebody, whoever's speaking, could you say who you are and speak up, please?
Actually, I'm just saying that's the select board, which is what would be, it's similar, I guess. That's already a hybrid meeting. It's already every day of the year that they meet, it's always public. So I can't imagine that they would not do town council the same way.
Good point.
Okay, so imagine this, Kathy. The law expires when? What we're all hopeful is that the governor will continue the hybrid, the law that permits hybrid public meetings. And it would be nice to know that at least our representatives, or ours, it should say the island's representatives and the select board, which I think they are favorably, will lobby for continued hybrid public meetings.
Just want to say one more thing, since I wasn't planning on broadcasting from my laptop, I did not bring my charger, so I have about a half an hour left. Otherwise, we go back to this, we go back to the way where it was very hard to hear. We'll still continue.
Well, let's see if we can finish in the after. I think, does anybody have anything else on the Town Council Study Commission, committee rather? And thank you, Donna, for the report. And yes, Donald.
Well, I lived in Reading, Massachusetts. The meeting would be open and then somebody would close the meeting and then it would be a private meeting of just the town councilors. I mean, things that.
The select board does that too.
It goes into executive session.
That's not intended.
Okay.
Well, it may have.
Yeah, that is
Well, for-
permitted. That is closely governed by the law of Massachusetts
Yeah.
as to when you can close
Right.
public meetings. And that's generally when you're talking about litigation strategy or, maybe negotiations with the union or something like that. But not for just general matters.
Well,
Right.
I'm just bringing that up.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's a good point. Okay, so then we'll thank Donna and go to the master plan. And I guess I'll start this off, and Kathy, maybe you can fill in as can be. Kathy learned, I guess, got an invitation as secretary, or in her role as the head of the Nantucket Together, that a private contractor, the usual private contractor, I guess, has been hired to help draft something that we're calling the Nantucket Master Plan. It's like what, a 5-year plan or something like that, and they're seeking input. And Kathy circulated this amongst, I guess, Peter Kahn and myself, and then I wrote to the entity that is sort of acting as the moderator and said, we'd like to be involved. And I got a response, which I think I need to send out, saying, yes, we'll be involved, and arrange to contact you. And that, but I have no idea what the timelines are and all the rest of that stuff. But it's an idea, and I think sort of Lynn brought this up at the last meeting, that we really need to know what our priorities are, and the way in which one realizes priorities in the town municipal government situation like this is to basically lobby them, so to speak, and get them included in these 5-year plans. So when they contact us, it would be nice to have a list of what it is that we're interested in happening, within the next 5 years. That's my 2 cents.
Can I address you on that? It's really a 10-year plan. And because I was the chair of the Sconset area plan, I just thought for all your benefit, I would tell you, every civic association was asked by the town planning department to update or create a plan from scratch. And so you go through a very set legal structure from the state of Massachusetts, where you state what the goals and policies of your community is. So, the vision of Sconset, we're a unique neighborhood and a historic village, and you have a general comment. You can identify what land use plan elements that you want to describe, which really encompasses zoning and boundaries, height restrictions for buildings. Then the second element is housing, where you identify and analyze existing housing needs and objectives for the preservation, improvement, or development. So this would affect certainly Surfside and all sorts of different areas here. The next component is economic development, where you identify policies and strategies for expansion or stabilization of the local economic base, which is really governed for commercial business. That's not applicable for Monomoy's. Their area plan would not necessarily identify that. The next part is natural and cultural resources. So you identify an inventory of significant natural, cultural, or historic resources and policies and strategies to protect and manage those resources. The next part is open space and recreation. Again, an inventory of recreational resources, policies and strategies for management and protection. And the final one, or there are 2 more, is services and facilities. So this encompasses parking, which is a bigger deal for Sconset. So this was a longer section. It can identify street lights and other kind of hard infrastructure things, water fountains, firehouses, police protection. And then it goes into circulation. So that is all about traffic. And you identify areas within your area that are problematic, or ways that you could identify ways to correct things like speed limits or, no parking or year-round NERDA buses was one of our proposals. And then you create an implementation program, but you basically defer to the NPEDC. So it's not meant to be super long. It was meant to be given to the planning department. So when they put in the master plan, they are taking every part of your area plan and factoring that in. This has created an issue with the civic associations, which I'm not sure why they didn't understand. There was always going to be an outside representative hired to mush this together. Right? It's not a very technical term, but so now Monomoy started an effort to say we need to be involved in every aspect of that. But they've given them the area plan, and that planning group has said when we put it all together, you can read it and look at it again, and we can discuss anything that you felt more strongly about. So it's not that they've taken them out of the process. This is more communication failure, I think, that went between the town side to the private partnerships that civic associations essentially kind of live for. And it's also, every time you do an area plan, you do a questionnaire to residents, you get feedback, you're not making it up. You have public meetings, you share your draft before it ever gets sent to the planning department and the select board. So I know it's now a big issue for the civic association to work out, but I think it's gotten inflamed to a point that's really not necessary. It should be more collegial at this point. Like, we'd like to help you when you're finished, but they've given them the area plans.
Can I just add, the benefit of the group, when Peter was referring to the fact that both he and I think Kathy received some communication from this Barrett group that is the facilitator. They indicated, at least in this letter or this email from last Tuesday, that these meetings are going to be occurring in September. So it doesn't give us a lot of time. At the same time, they did say that there would be a series of other interviews. This process is going to go on for quite some time. And they said, you can sort of you can find your place at any point in the process. I personally think, given all the civic associations involvements, I mean, we certainly overlap with those groups. I would rather see the first draft come out of something and then comment on that, rather than us try to recreate the wheel here and start talking about what the non-voting taxpayers want generally. I just think that, given the time limits, I think it's going to be very difficult to do that. So,
How many do you have? How many civic associations have actually presented?
I think there are at least 8 civic associations that have filed. Places like Quidnet, they're so small, so you can see most of those sub categories don't apply to them. So they might talk about natural resources. They're most concerned with the pond.
But it's 8 out of how many civic?
25.
So, but you have to realize some of the 25 are, we're a private road, and we created an HOA so that we can maintain the road and clip. The major ones are Tom Nevers, Surfside, which is now dealing with Surfside Crossing, Sconset, Town, Brand Point, Matticat, and Eel Point sometimes comes and talks, but mostly not. It really are the areas that have a heavier concentration of people and have more parts of this overall checklist of what you discussed. So
Lynn,
yes, sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I thought you would come to the end of your breath. Yeah. Is there an existing 10-year plan then that this is going to update? Because it may be the best place for anybody who's interested in this to start is by looking at the last master plan to see what it encompasses and see sort of like, is there anything that, based on our experiences over the years, we think has been left out or that needs to be added in, sort of on a 50,000-foot level rather than the very down to earth level that the civic associations are looking at this. Where the civic association, because I kind of agree with Peter. I do agree with Peter that we need to really understand what our role is in this, given, and not just duplicate things that other people are doing. And I just think the place to start, and maybe somebody could send a link if this is online, is to look.
It's online, it's under the town, website. I can look for the link for you. It's harder to find the area master plan links. But when you look at what we do as a committee, all of these area plans have an overview that comes into coastal resilience, comes into natural resources, keeping land and water healthy. It comes into public safety and traffic. And that overview is something that we can obviously support because we've discussed it. We've had individual members of the town come to present. So if we look at a macro level, you're there to support how they're planning for the future. And Peter, to your comment, they've had existing plans. They're mandated by the state of Massachusetts. So what you're looking at for updates are obviously related to the population increase, summer as well as winter, and that effect on your natural resources, your circulation patterns, your housing is critical in this overall plan. So you're not inventing the wheel, you're adapting to how the population and their needs have changed. So those updates would reflect more affordable housing for the center of the island, better bike paths and ability to use natural resources. So I think it's not as, I don't know, as controversial as it sounds at this point. And I think we do have a perspective, but I agree with Peter Kahn that you wait to see a draft and see if you can point out something that wasn't identified with a real solution. And so we can help there, I think.
Peter, Scott wants to speak.
Yeah, I have a memory of looking at that plan about 1.5 years ago, the existing one, and a fine list of things to do and all the rest of it. But what interested me is for a long-term plan, it doesn't seem to address or even broach the question of what is our strategy in this town for growth. We are on a path to build to maximum capacity. That has a lot of knock-on consequences, which are fully foreseeable. I'm under no illusion that there's no consensus on this issue, but we're not even asking the question of, is that really, or is that foreseeable path one that we're all entirely comfortable with? And, the requirements that come with that. And if it is, fine, so be it. But I'm not really hearing the question asked. We're doing a lot of pothole fixing and, other issues. Yes, we need affordable housing, but affordable housing is a derivative of the larger question.
You would see it in a granular level in the area plan where we said the commercial center cannot be expanded and can only service so much. And this can only service so much. And the road structures can only service so much. So there is a specificity.
And where is that limit and how are we going to execute on that?
And that is the role of the NPEDC and the select board to come up with that plan. That is why you elect them.
Yeah. Hey, was it-
Yeah, well, no, there's just, there's a lot of, right, but we are on a path.
Yeah, no,
We have.
We are on a path.
Libby
And
admitted at our meeting that we've exceeded, is the barn door open and it's, she said, we couldn't change anything 2 years ago is kind of where she saw the line. And there is no pushback to real estate development.
Yeah. So maybe I can put a bow on this and say that what we've done is to basically put in a placeholder so that we can, if we decide we should, get involved in an organized way. And I think it's for us in the future to decide whether we think there is something that we really need to say or do about this, or whether it's really been covered by a lot of other civic groups and other groups on the island that we wouldn't be really adding anything other than the obvious.
Peter, all of us in
Yeah.
communities that have civic associations already have the opportunity to participate by, as Lynn is talking about, each group comes up with its own plan and they talk to the people in the community who are seasonal and non-seasonal.
Yeah.
Some are permanent, in Grand Point, we hardly have any permanent. We have two or three people in the entire Grand Point, but in other communities, but the participation opportunity is there and it's being done right now.
So Peter, what I can do, the first meeting, is the 9th, and it's in person, and it's like 8 people, you had to sign up. I signed up, so I got in, so I can share what came out of that, because what's gonna be after that are hybrid meetings that everybody can sign up for. So if you want, I can sort of take notes and send that to everybody after I go.
Sure.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If the computer
So this is
doesn't
a kind of a watch and monitor
Yeah.
type of thing, and see if the people in Grant Point are representing all the non-voting taxpayers. So is there anything else that we need to say or do on this at this point, other than it's on our radar screen, and we'll hear more about it at our next meeting, whether it's on the 10th or at some other time. Okay, let's move on then. Just the update on the SG articles. The special town meeting is what is it? It's next week, right? Or
No,
this coming week.
17th.
The 17th. Peter is our designated person to speak if need be, and I think the idea is to keep an eye out for anything that would cross the line on our policy that non-voting taxpayers be treated equally under whatever the town meeting decides to pass. And if it appears that there is some discrimination that would be unconstitutional in our view, then Peter will speak up about that. I think that's going to be our role in this particular special town meeting. And so yeah, go ahead, Peter.
I attended a meeting sort of the, for lack of a better term, the compromise committee, the committee that put together Article 1, the one that's been endorsed by the select board. And that, and having worked with them, or they had asked us to participate. We were successful, obviously, in keeping out any residence requirement in Article 1. There is talk, and that of others, including and Act Now and other such groups, of having a 30-day residence requirement. With the idea being that somebody needs to live in the residence, the owner and or a close or immediate family member to be allowed to then STR thereafter. I made it clear to these people that that would not fly. And as far as we're concerned, it raises serious legal issues under the Dormant Commerce Clause. Interestingly, we have convinced town council, who has now strongly endorsed our position. That will not necessarily stop them from putting this forth, somebody putting it forth, particularly because they will say, okay, well, the provisions are severable. So the idea being, even though you tell them that it's gonna immediately induce a lawsuit, which will cost the town money, et cetera, they say, well, so what? You know, if it's ruled against, you know, we'll just slice that piece off. There is a general feeling out there, obviously, that keeping Nantucket neighborhoods as Nantucket neighborhoods, this would somehow assist that. The law has said that you need, if there are other ways to accomplish something like this, you need to go that way. You need to stay away from the discrimination. And one way to do that is to put a cap on STRs, the number of STRs. And interestingly, that has been fought by various groups for a variety of reasons. But I think from our position, that would be, I mean, we would simply say, hey, there are other alternatives. You just cannot discriminate between residents and non-residents. So, a long way of saying that this could be an issue at town meeting. I will be prepared to stand up and wave the flag. Obviously, I have no vote, so.
Just one,
Good.
I might just add one quick thing. I met with the same guys as well. I think that was basically anybody who was on the short-term rental work group, they wanted to reach out, so they did. And one of the things that occurred to me as an STR operator, I just got notified by the state of Massachusetts Department of Revenue that Article 3, which is the only thing the short-term rental work group proposed that passed, that's the community impact fee, if we all remember that, 3% on anybody added to anybody who has 2 or more short-term rentals. So that passed, that's about conservatively another $1 million in the town coffers every year that comes manna from heaven. No taxpayer pays it. So that's what the voters voted for. But Article 1 makes them illegal
Going forward,
It's
the ones that the existing after 8 years. After 8
yes,
years.
so it's basically saying, you know, do you want to really get rid of that income you just approved? So that just came out. It goes into effect October 1st. So that's just another thing that may come up at town meeting.
I think, you know, that just is another example. I am very pessimistic that anything will pass. I think confusion will continue to reign. A point like that will continue to, you know, will cause people to think, oh, you know, and this is going down in flames again. But we'll see. We'll see. That's
Okay, so it sounds like we're ready for whatever comes to pass, with the caveat that we don't have a vote. We just have Peter's voice. So good luck, Peter.
yeah, well, you can watch me.
I propose that we pass over the amplified noise bylaw unless anybody has anything to add. I certainly don't have anything at this time.
Noise.
Noise, okay.
Yeah. Let's see. The next thing is basically something we started to discuss last time, and that is, can we develop a priority list of what, you know, whether it's quality of life issues or any other issues that one can look at, and when people ask, well, what are the positions of the non-voting taxpayers group? One could read down and say, well, these are our positions, and I tend to think that given Kathy's batteries, we can think about this a little bit longer and move on to anything the PR committee wants to say. But if others have a strong feeling that we ought to be discussing priorities right now, I'm willing to do that.
Can I just, and I don't have a strong feeling, because I think Kathy's
Yeah.
important to be safe.
I
But
can move the phone if I have to.
that's all right. But I would like to I just would put a slight, add a slight fillet to this. As we think about this, it seems to me there are sort of two issues. One is, all right, a list of, we can show others, whatever, that these are our positions. But I think at the same time, we ought to be thinking about what are our internal priorities as to where we can best use our time and experience to make a difference on an issue or issues that we're concerned about. And that brings me, for example, to the issue of parking. We've talked about this in the past, where we may actually have some expertise in this area. Through Gary's experience, we talked about the last parking people who are here on island who have incredible experience. And we can do something constructive as opposed to just simply talk about concerns. And so I think as we think about that issue, that ought to be a priority as well, maybe a separate list.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. So parking, and we've also, supported better traffic flows in the past, and then things of that nature that have not passed, but that's no reason not to continue doing it. In a way, this sort of ties in with the master plan thinking as well, does it not? Things that we ought to be considering. Even what Scott raised is, which I might put it as, what is the end game on Nantucket? The end game is, how do we develop so that you have a vibrant community and you haven't gone too far? And some of these are very big picture, some of these are very small picture, but all of them are part of a picture that go to how one wants to see their lives and the lives of others on Nantucket. So that's good.
Maybe-
PR committee. Yep, go ahead.
Maybe looking at the summary level, you said there's like a 3,000-foot thing of each master plan.
Yeah, you can
You
look
can
at,
just quickly zip through those, and maybe that is a place to start the discussion. Maybe.
Yeah. Well, I will try to, find the past master plan. And is there at least an outline of not an outline, but I guess some structure of the elements? I know, Lynn, you went through a lot of different,
Yeah.
8 or 9 or 10 elements of the new one. It might be a way of organizing our thoughts.
Why don't we see what
in a comprehensive way?
Why don't we see what Kathy brings back on the 9th? Is that when you're meeting, Kathy?
Yeah.
Let's see because I'm sure they're gonna present you with something, a list of issues or what I would assume.
Yes.
Okay.
See if they did all that. I'll look real quick while you're going.
All right. I'm anxious to hear from Steve.
Okay.
I have one thing before the brief PR committee report is that all of these issues like parking and quality of life and noise are critical to those of us who live here, but sort of thinking what the police chief said last week, and reading an article in the New York Times about the island of Ibiza, I think is how you pronounce it. I don't think this island is sustainable in terms of housing 20 years from now, that there won't be people to work who can afford to work here and own a home or even rent a home and have a family. And I'm just not sure if that's just beyond us or if the island is, if the people who work here are gonna live in tents for 2 years and then ultimately leave and be replaced by others. So that's just a thought I've been having. I don't,
Just a question to that point, and again, this may have been discussed before, but you know,
It's,
we're on an island with finite geography, and every time there's a real estate transaction, 2% of it goes to taking more land out of production. Is there any attempt to take some of that 2% and deal with the housing crisis? Because you can't because they don't want to, or you can't because it's illegal.
But,
Because they don't want to.
Yeah.
Because they can go back and change the charter.
but they are,
Because they already did that.
Right, but what I'm saying is,
20 years.
we're not sustainable 5 or 10 years from now. I mean, there's only about 40% of this island that you can do anything on.
We tried
4%.
every year to add-
4%?
4% of the island undeveloped. That's exactly what,
Yeah, so I mean, how do you
4%,
solve this problem?
50% is in conservation.
Right.
46% is either commercial or residential
You
use.
know, Big slug.
4% is undeveloped.
Yeah.
4%.
well, that's
But
why,
you can change zoning such that a lot that could only accommodate one house can be converted into 10 condominiums.
Right, but
So it's possible to, it's
But
not
then
only
it's gonna look like New York
4%.
It is 4%, but you can, you can stuff a lot into 4%, but
yeah,
still.
I mean, I think we should bring next spring, when we're back in person, or over the winter when in Zoom, a member of the land bank, the former manager or owner rather, I should say, of the Wisconsin market, whose name is Mark Donato's on there. I've heard through other sources that he is somebody who is at least open to making some changes in the charter. And because a lot of people are talking about this now. And I think we ought to get, we ought to make our views known to them through a meeting like that, hear their rationale and then express our views, because obviously this is
This may be an area where long-term, we actually could have an impact. To the earlier question about what is the growth strategy, I'm not sure there is one. Okay, but part of the growth strategy is we don't have enough land to support the people we have. How can this committee, with our expertise, contacts and whatnot, help Libby and the town think through that issue? Because I don't think the answer is wailing about housing shortages, we don't have a place for the police and everything else. We don't have enough land to solve that problem.
usable.
But,
Usable land.
so maybe, Surfside Crossing is a perfect case of a piece of land that probably, if it were just private, single-family homes, could accommodate 15 or 20 or whatever the number is. And they're trying to go forward, the developers, with 124 condominiums. Is that something we should be positive about, rather than
Well,
negative?
again, I'm not an expert
And I don't
on
know.
that specific thing, but we've got two very different kind of things going on at the same time. We have very, very finite resources, and we have a historic cultural anomaly that we want to preserve. Right? So you could push for condominiums, but I don't think the citizens of Nantucket want something that looks like downtown Manhattan or downtown Boston, where you have essentially tenements over time. So we've got to balance those two different perspectives, because we're not in a place where we have unlimited ability to kind of create land. Like if you're in West Virginia or someplace, you knock down a mountain. But we're not in that situation. And I think maybe in the long term, helping the town think through some of those difficult issues, because they're binary. You can't do both.
Well,
We might have a role.
Support the lease to locals program that they started.
Yeah.
And not renting an STR, providing year-round housing, which is fully within any non-resident taxpayer's purview to take their garage apartment, or even if we went back to the old days where you rented that to the teacher for 9 months.
Yeah.
And then she left for the summer because you used it for your family. But it's the lack of integrated housing across the island where building, this is a huge project that will create so much traffic, just like Old South Road.
Right.
Created a huge problem for traffic, but was necessary housing for those who can't afford on the open market to find anything. So it does come down
Just to
housing.
give everybody a sense of this, according to Housing Nantucket, they have 900 applicants on their rolls
absolutely.
of people who are in need of affordable housing.
Oh, absolutely. You know,
900, that includes all the police, not all, but policemen, firemen, town workers,
to me, you know, I heard something a few months ago that to me was very significant, but it hasn't had any traction yet. It was a presentation by the Affordable Housing Trust. And for the first time, I heard Brian Sullivan, who's the chair of that, and Tucker Holland, who was the head of the Affordable Housing, right? Both suggested we need to find a way to use land bank land. And to me, I'm a big fan of that because we need it not just for housing. I'm thinking about coastal resilience. We're losing a lot of, we're gonna lose, there's 17 homes in Mattocket we know they're going. We can't save them. They're gone. There's no plan to save them. Where they're gonna move? In other communities, they move them inland and they try to work out some benefits. We don't have the land. To me, I say the land bank for affordable housing, the land bank for coastal resilience. So to me, the best thing we can do as a committee is to do the research to figure out how do we change the land bank charter. I'd love to know what the history is. You know, you said that, Gene, you said there was one change already in the charter. I'd love to know what the history was, and I'd love to know, get some advice, legal advice from someone who understands the Massachusetts rules. How can Nantucket change the land bank charter to the extent that it can be permitted
Yeah.
for these two emergencies, coastal resilience or affordable housing? Wouldn't that be great for us to take a lead in that?
Peter wants to say something.
So Donna, you've had your hand up a long time, and then I'll sort of come back to what Gary just said and what everybody just said, and try to wrap this up for today.
I just wanted to say that the land bank and the historic origins of this and so forth, it's part of what Nantucket is. My concern is the Richmond project, Surfside. People come in and they take advantage of what the government offers. And I don't know if it's the state or the federal or both, but if they provide a small amount of affordable housing, they can build these huge things. So my concern is if we start opening up what's going on with the land bank and all this wonderful land that we have, that's an integral part of what draws people to Nantucket. We're going to have the builders coming in droves and doing the same darn thing. So I do have a concern about that. As far as, I guess everybody's familiar with Wiggles Way. It's one of the first, if you will, essential workers project. And they had quite a few applicants, I think 300, and a number of teachers got full-time housing for the first time. So certain things are being done. I just am concerned. I want us to be cautious and not open the floodgates, because you're going to have Jamie Feeney and all these other folks come in and try to create umpteen condos who will probably rent them in the summer anyway. And once the floodgates are open, I'm not so sure what's going to happen.
We have no floodgates. There
I
are no
would like
floodgates.
to ask you.
No, but if we open them, we will.
There are
have
no
them.
floodgates, and there will be none after the town meeting. People.
Is
Yeah.
the town the biggest-
So let me just, because I can see
I would think
that we are a microcosm of the whole approach to this situation. And by that, I mean, if you were to poll this committee, and I'm just listening to people that have very, very different viewpoints on the same issue, that's the reason it hasn't been solved, because there's been no political will one way or the other to take action to solve the problem. Certainly coastal resiliency, sea level rise, whatever you want to call it, is part of the story, because the land is shrinking in addition to what the land bank is doing. My recollection, and I may have the facts wrong, is that 2 or 3 years ago, there was a move at the annual town meeting to divert some of the land back money into building affordable housing. My recollection is that we currently have before the state legislature a bill to create a land bank type of tax for affordable housing that has not passed because the so-called real estate industry is against it. A person, maybe not the person, who knows about all of this stuff is Arthur Reed, one of the local lawyers who I think he was a prime mover and sponsor of the effort to get some of that land bank money that 3 or 4 years ago that did not pass. The one thing I can say is that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing all over and over again and expecting a different outcome. And virtually everything that has been discussed today on this issue by this committee has been looked at in Nantucket, and there's not been any agreement as to which way to go. If you try to say anything, because the land bank is also a conservancy kind of an operation, any anti-conservation effort is like touching a third rail. There've been a number of us on the committee that have been questioning aren't human beings part of the conservation issue too, and why can't the Land Bank Act be interpreted? But it requires state action to do all this sort of stuff. It can't be any state action unless there's a local will to do it, and it's a political problem. We have a real economic problem, and the only way to solve it is politically. I think this is a great thing for us to talk about, but we're going to end up. It's going to be like being in college dormitories late at night, coming up with all these ideas. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it, because who knows who's going to graduate and actually be able to effectuate some of this stuff. It's just got this Gordian knot, and I haven't seen anybody who has whatever the sword is that can, undo the knot.
Patty has a question.
I was questioning whether I assume the town is the biggest employer next to maybe the hospital. And there's such and we had Libby say, there's such a shortage of housing for all these, the fire department, all this kind of thing. And yet the town is interested in getting in the business of, care, long-term care for elderly people, and putting up buildings for that. And there's the building, Sherburne, or not Sherburne, but the one right up by the water. And those are things that I keep thinking we should be lobbying the voting public to say, you're putting a lot of money into making housing for elderly, but we can't even sustain going forward. So is there a campaign that we could do with the town, with the bigger employers of, this is your problem? When I say that, I say it glibly, but they need to address that, and where are you going to put your money, especially in the town?
They passed funding for housing for town employees, so they are taking that on, so we can support that.
Yeah, I think that needs to be a bigger voice, because they're putting money, they put a great big bunch of money into a fire station, a police station, or whatever, and they're good at putting up buildings in the hospital, but are you funding for housing? And that needs to be front and center in some of the things that get said in a letter or whatever.
Every time I hear these debates, and I keep saying, to me, really very simple stuff. The number one issue on this island is housing for the people that need to support the town. And it is so important. You hear it from the police chief, you hear it from the hospital, you hear it from everybody, you hear it from the stores and the merchants, right? And yet, when you say, well, we have an answer to that, And suddenly the land bank can't be touched. You gotta rebuild Old Island Home. The Old Island Home is gonna cost $100 million.
It's a NIMBY,
To
it's a
re,
NIMBY issue.
$100
NIMBY
million.
issue.
I keep saying,
It's up to
What's your number?
105.
what's your problem? Is it number one? Is it housing or not? I mean, make up your mind. In the town, unfortunately, since there are 9,000 eligible voters and we only get 1,200 showing up, most of the voters aren't heard. They're not heard. The way the town meeting works, the voice of the public is not heard. All those people waiting on the waiting list, the 900 or 1,000 people, I assure you, they're not spending 8 hours sitting at the annual town meeting.
Well, I think when you talk about moving our island home.
Yeah.
That will have to go to the voters.
It's going to February. We've already got $6.5 million being spent now
But-
on the plan.
Not the voters at town meeting, but the voters, and that's gonna have to go because of the size of the,
We're far from approving. It has not been approved.
it has not been approved yet. $8 million.
That's going to 2025 meeting.
Was approved for
The plan.
planning, et cetera. I mean, I agree, it's a ridiculous waste of money.
So unbelievable.
But there were enough people. We have our grandmother who's gonna be in there next year, and we wanna go visit her.
Yeah.
It'd be cheaper for the island to buy an airplane and fly people to Cape Cod and give them Uber passes to go visit their grandmothers once a week.
As the person who raised this about 15 minutes ago, I want to call the question and give a 1-minute report from the PR committee,
Yes, good idea.
which is to deal with the short-term issues and ultimately with the long-term issues, is that I'll continue to send press releases when we have speakers, and we sometimes get 6 or 9 people coming to listen. And the other thing is that all of us individually and any of us and collectively, we can get people involved, whether it's parking or noise, or there are a lot of people on this island who are not just the 15 of us, but the thousands of others who enjoy the quality of life here and can help us solve some of these short-term problems. And so I think in terms of continuing to do the announcement of our meetings, and for all of us to talk about doing PR, sending letters to the 3 publications about issues that we feel strongly about that will improve the quality of life here.
Yep, good. It would be interesting, and Gary, I'm wondering, I think in the last 2 weeks, I read that, I think last week, there was a coastal resiliency convocation of some sort at the Great Harbor Yacht Club, I think.
Climate
to
change.
go over all the issues. Yeah, climate change. And there was some statement in whatever it was that I read saying that the Nantucket plans to combat climate change had a price tag of something like $1 billion. I only mentioned that, I may have misread, but that number was a staggering notion. That when you talk about our island home, when you talk about the need for affordable housing, it would be nice to see just an accountant's approach to this, do a balance sheet of saying, what's all the deferred sort of maintenance that is on the table, and what's the price of that, and how in the world is anybody ever going to come up with that price, whether it's the federal government, the state government, or the local government, or pieces of all of that, and then set some priorities as to what needs to be done first,
Peter,
in order to stave off the problem.
Peter, I just want you to know.
Yeah, go ahead.
All of that information is available to all of us right now. There is a committee called the Capital Committee that the town has, and they publish these reports. It drives me cuckoo when I read the reports, because they have the projected capital needs for major projects over the next 5 or 10 years. It is so staggering when I look at that. And it's available. I mean, I remember, you know, I'd have to go figure out how to find it, but there is a committee, there's a capital committee. In fact, I was thinking of, I have enough on my plate, but they were looking for somebody, you know, there's 5 people who are members of the capital committee, and they assign scores. They assign scores to each of these big requests, the wannabes, you know, we want to build this, we want to build that. And when you look at the amount, it's hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And no one says anything about it. And then they go to the town meeting 2 years ago and they get approval to spend $6.5 million on the Old Island Home plan without even knowing how much it's going to cost to move it from Sherburne, you know, from the creeks. I mean,
Do they ever ask
No,
the
they're gonna
question?
use-
and they approve that.
Peter, may I speak?
What?
One at a time, yeah. Gary, Donna after
Yeah,
Gary.
Gary.
Yeah.
I did have a question, actually, if it's okay for Gary. Gary, who's on the capital committee?
There's 5 people that you know the names. You can look it up.
A good friend of mine is Richard Hussey.
I'm
Richard
sorry?
Hudson, yeah.
I think, I'm not sure. He
Yeah.
was-
I look at and they have a whole system where they have to make a determination as to how important is this, you know, is the cost justified? And should we put it on for 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028? I mean, it's unbelievable to take a look at what the figures show.
You know, I'm wondering if the town council,
Conference taxpayers committee.
Donna's speaking.
I'm wondering if, you know, having a town council might eliminate some of this vagueness or ambiguity, or make it more transparent, perhaps?
I think this all goes back to the question that was posed earlier. What is the strategy for growth? Because I've never heard or been in any meeting where people talk about what is the cost of unconstrained growth. And that's what we're seeing, is unconstrained growth. And it's going to cost a fortune. And to your point, will be the non-voting bankrupt taxpayers.
People will go to St. Edward, Prince Edward Island, and they're looking to find a new place to.
Well, I'm just saying, you know, Libby, when she was here, said, you know, can you help me through some of these larger issues? Maybe just helping her think through how you pose that question and how we kind of answer that question with a strategy consistent with what we want to preserve, whether it's coastal resiliency or the beauty of Nantucket and its historical presence. But I mean, these are real issues that if I was Libby Gibson, I would want to have help answering.
You want to know who the members are?
Yeah. So let me, I'm sorry, did I just cut somebody off? I apologize if I did.
Yeah, Lynn was gonna give us the names of the people, yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Stephen Welch is the chair,
Oh.
Peter Kaiser's the vice chair, Howard Matz, Christy Kickham, Don Holgate is the select board representative, John Kitchener is the NP EDC rep, and Jill Fife.
Yes.
Jill Deeth.
Thank you,
She's good.
is the finance committee representative. So I mean, it's balanced. And you can see the 10-year capital plan, and every department has a wish list.
It's staggering.
And the total is 1,073,000,000.
I was only happy because I saw the capital plan for the Wisconsin fire station. That, you know,
So-
we're in the middle of that. So that would be good.
3 million.
We're in the middle.
Thinking of, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Thinking of what we just discussed, and thinking of, you know, maybe either next meeting or looking forward to next year. And I do think that probably we should have a hybrid meeting or two over the winter, not on a monthly basis or a 3-weekly basis, whatever it's scheduled, but probably 2 meetings over the winter. If one were to pose the question that really has been raised in the last half hour of discussion here, I would pose it this way, and this is in a very derogatory way, is Nantucket a giant Ponzi scheme? You know, we all sort of invested in this Ponzi scheme, but when you look at how does it end, and that's really, you know, in a way, the question that Scott raised earlier, all these facts are terribly important to understand and put in context. And so maybe what we want to do is either read this capital, you know, balance sheet report, and or have a member of that committee come and talk to us and you know, explain how they approach this very, very large commitment that is recognized, and how it can be fulfilled, and particularly how it can be fulfilled where there are things that apparently are out of our control, such as you know, the climate change and so on and so forth. But would we be doing? Are we just, you know, reinventing the wheel here and stating the obvious, or is there need for is there an organized approach, or can we supply an organized approach toward this sort of big picture capital management question that is important to the future of the island?
I think it would be interesting for us to sponsor a, I won't call it a webinar, a meeting where you have someone from the campaign, you have the head of NPEDC, you have someone like Bruce Lindsay, the builder, to justify, okay, you're gonna keep building, what does that mean? You have
Land bank, I want to hear
the
from
land bank, and that you put together a symposium at whether, I mean, I know Gary hates the library because the statistics are terrible. But, you know, if you can get the high school as a forum place, that you have a real discussion and you choose a moderator who can address things and have them talk. I think it could be kind of interesting, a little different than the Civic League that focuses on who's running for election, but you could get a select board member on this, and you have just a think tank kind of approach to, here's our problem, how are you each contributing or solving?
But I also think we could, as a group, offer more propaganda on an organized basis, in that you could have each one of us take a week or a month and put together a letter to the editor, so to speak, with our name attached to it, with the committee name. Obviously, you'd have to have all the letters approved by everybody, but everybody get out there and write a letter about some of these things, because I don't think the voice is being heard. You get people complain that town meeting is just the people at the town meeting. Well, we could be in a campaign to try and adjust their thinking, are you aware that if you do this, or if we don't do this, if you put up a new Our Island home, that means you aren't going to be sustaining the housing for workers. So that propaganda could be, with our tagline, could be what we stand for, in that these need to be heard, these ideas need to be heard. It's not just what the Islander is voting for at town meeting.
You know, but Patty, you is raising a very interesting point here, because up until now, we have not taken a position on any issue which isn't detrimental to the non-voting taxpayers specifically versus everybody else. What Patty is suggesting, which I've thought of and I've over the years, and I said, you know, I'm not sure we should be doing that, is to take a position as not a particular concern of the non-voting taxpayers, but just we think common sense, it doesn't make sense to have this nursing home, you know, for $110 million or whatever it is, when we have all the other needs. But that is not something that is a special problem for non-voting taxpayers. We've never taken that position before. And so the question is, would people really resent us a lot and say, look at these people, they go back to their homes, you know, in November, and they don't care what happens to us, you know? They're not very nice people, so
Yeah, but-
we've never done that before.
But,
Don't say that
but
anyway.
talking about the non-island home, we're doing a symposium on handling growth as
Yeah.
suggested. You know, some people may not like it, but I think that's a very.
A symposium would be fine as long as, but if we take a
reasonable
position,
thing for us to do. And even to take positions where we're worried because who's gonna be paying 90 of that $100 million is all of our constituents.
Right.
And if the locals don't like it, well, they don't like us already.
And you know, we all have a seat at the table because of the value of our real estate
Right, of course.
and why we come to Nantucket.
You can't play it as a selfish.
Yeah.
right, right, right.
But I'm
right.
saying,
We
you know,
love
we're
Nantucket.
non-voters, but
Yeah.
we're not non-interested.
May I say something, Peter
Sure.
Halley?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
having recently experienced this on the town council committee meetings, they will take our money and that's kind of it. So if we're going to represent, I think we should do it as private citizens, not as a group, unless it's unanimous, unless we have a unanimous opinion, pro or con, any of these topics.
Yep, so I think that the targeting any particular project, especially a project that has great local public support, would be a dead on arrival mistake. However, talking about the nut that must be crunched at some point, let's call it $1.7 billion over X number of years, and how that can be financed and how one approaches decisions about what is wise under those circumstances, then leads to kind of a decision tree where people make their own decisions to fit within the abilities and the requirements that the ability to meet the requirements and know what those requirements are. Because this group, I don't think, is ever going to make a decision for the town about our island home. And indeed, I know not from from friends who are non-resident taxpayers. In the past, they have brought relatives, very, very elderly, infirm relatives to the island during the summer months, and if there's an empty bed there, they will make use of that facility, as well as local residents will make use of the facility. So I'm not sure that this is entirely an issue that only benefits the resident taxpayers. I think it probably is broader than that. But I think it would be a mistake for this committee to go after things that are very, very popular. We may point out the follow one's ways, but I think that's the best we can do because, again, we don't have the votes. But I do think that as I sit here as an owner, with the Scott says, a stake in all this, understanding the big picture and the series of decisions that need to be made would be helpful to the island and to non-voting taxpayers, and it was something worthwhile to do. But we're going to have to build an interest locally to having some sort of meeting like that. And that's going to take a lot of work to come up with some basic facts and kind of the what would you call it, the précis for having a meeting about this. Because a lot of people may not want to do this. They just sweep it all under the rug and keep going. Yeah.
I was wondering, I think it was alluded to earlier during our meeting. Would we want to invite somebody from the Capital Group? I know Jill Veith is on the town council committee.
Yeah, so I think the answer is, I think probably yes. but we need to do a little bit of homework
Right.
to understand what they're doing and what those numbers are, and if somebody can understand the town's balance sheet, if that's what this is. And it might be somebody from that committee. It might also be the there's the fellow who's sort of the CFO of the town.
Yeah, Brian's great.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
great.
exactly. And we need to figure out an approach that I would say is sort of non-accusatory approach, but rather here we are. What are the facts, and when you agree upon the facts, what do you do about them? I think that might be a service, if indeed that's not already being done. I have a feeling it's already being done, but being done in other quarters and not so transparently.
So Peter,
But since we,
Scott wants to speak, and also,
We gotta end this meeting.
I'm on my phone now, so maybe we can keep going, but
Okay.
also we need to make a decision about our next meeting.
Yeah, let's go.
And talk about that, so those are what's here, I don't know when this is.
Okay, so I think, okay, you're right. I've exhausted you, we've exhausted ourselves, whatever, on this subject, but it's, I think, something that ought to be on our next agenda. And so it can be. So what do we do about the next meeting?
Oh,
Any
may I-
suggestions?
Great.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, I think maybe the way anything we do here will be vastly improved by understanding what work has been done and where the expertise lies. Which suggests to me in our discussion of what our agenda items should be, maybe this is a persistent agenda item that we work through, various axes, within the town, the people who have expertise, people who have looked at this. I think we can probably unearth an awful lot of information. That would just vastly improve anything we might ultimately want to do, a symposium or whatever, but being vastly more informed on where the knowledge is, where the bodies are buried, would I think tremendously improve our effectiveness.
Maybe a place to start would be to invite the CFO.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's a baseline, invite them, whether it's the next meeting, and just begin the process, working our way through it.
Yeah, it's what I call, everybody's got an opinion. What are the facts?
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Donna.
Yeah, I was gonna say, first of all, I think we should do our homework, as you just said, and know something, know a lot about this capital group before we have a speaker. So if we're going to have a speaker next time, we should do some homework. So that we can, when we ask questions, we know a lot about the background of the capital group. The other thing is, I wanted just to go back to the town council meeting that is slated for October 5th, I think. Yes, Saturday, October 5th. I just sent a text to Joe Grouse, asked him if we could be hybrid. I don't have an answer yet, but based on that, would we want to attend if we get hybrid? Do we want to attend that and make that our meeting? Or what would you suggest, Chair?
There's a second meeting on the 12th, on the 10th rather.
Thursday, yeah.
You don't have to attend that meeting.
I think the main thing is we'd like somebody to listen. If it's not a hybrid meeting, the question is, how do you get information about that meeting and what happened at that meeting?
Well, Donna's gonna be here.
It says Pam.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, she's not.
I'd like to wait to hear from Joe so that I could present this to you and you could discuss it with the committee, maybe.
Look,
So if it is hybrid, then what do we do?
So why wouldn't it be on Zoom?
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense then.
Well, I agree, but I don't know. So that was raised during our meeting today and I've
An official
texted
town
Joe
meeting, though. It's
and I'm
not a
waiting to
meeting
hear
of-
back from him.
It's not governed by the conflict of interest.
Well,
laws.
I was just thinking.
That's
from a
what-
practical standpoint.
Oh, yeah.
You'd want to, if you're gonna hold two of those meetings and you want as many people as possible to attend, of course you do it on Zoom.
Yeah.
So let's do two things. Donna, you're going to basically take charge of figuring out when and under what circumstances this next meeting are, and let us know.
I'll let
So
you
that
know
we
right
can
away.
then make, yeah, okay. And then number two, we've got this now sort of grandiose idea that we can make sense out of the town's finances and balance sheet. Does anybody want to, take charge of mastering this area, or at least starting to gather the facts that might be relevant to all of us if we had them?
Well, the town has fabulous budget presentations that,
Well, why don't we just get the CFO in here? Listen, that's a good place to
Yeah.
I
start.
think we need information first.
Okay.
It's all
because
online.
I think
It's all online. Take
it's
a
all
look.
online.
Yeah, just
There's a whole
Exactly. I
presentation.
think I think as a committee and members, we should review that first and have him, and
That's right.
be,
You have between now and next the meeting on October 5th to do that. We can.
yes, and that's fine, but I'm
Okay.
just saying we should do that.
All right, so let's invite.
okay, but
Let's
the
invite the CFO.
invitation, the invitation, the CFO has to say, we'd like you to come to speak about.
Okay.
And then I think we need to be a
Let's
little
take
bit
a little
more.
light on that, talking,
Yeah,
given
capital
the capital,
allocation.
given the capital, capital and other issues that are, believe me, he's got a.
Expected bankruptcy of the town.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The opponent.
Exactly.
Okay,
Before we go underwater.
so are we gonna meet on the
Yeah.
fifth?
It'll be underwater.
Okay,
The fifth,
so we meet on October 5th, and we're gonna invite the CFO
trailer?
to come to that meeting.
and
Okay,
it's
good.
10 a.m.
10 a.m. in the trailer.
Unless the other committee is gonna need this trailer.
Yeah, we got it first. We got it first.
We got it.
They'll be in
It's
there.
already on there.
Always.
So who will be in the trailer on the 5th?
I will.
Responsible, okay,
On
and then will one of you
Well, I won't
also contact the town and see if we can't get a working system in the trailer for that meeting?
Kathy's the expert.
Right, they
Yeah, yeah,
they fixed what was broken and now something else.
Right.
'Cause there's a.
okay,
Okay, all right.
Get it.
Kathy will
okay.
get it.
So do we need to adjourn now?
Yes, so moved.
Second.
Thank goodness. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed?
No.
Thank you very much. A very interesting meeting with good ideas, and I appreciate it.
Ciao.
Enjoy the beach in France.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see if you some friends.
Okay, bye-bye.
Right.
Well, that's okay, you have a rosé at lunch anyway.
And when are you headed back to
Thank you
Vero
for
Beach?
asking.
I'm heading to Connecticut, probably around the 20th. And then, the Bureau in November.
Okay.
Back to Northwestern Connecticut for,
Well, that's nice. That's Lake,
Salisbury, actually, yeah. You send a kid to Hatchkiss?
No, I grew up outside of Hartford, and I used to go up that, at the, what do you call it, White Hart Inn, and.
Sure, that's a mile from my house.
Yeah, no, it's great.
And I think I told you, I work in Torrington.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful part of the state.
No one wants to make hard choices,
Oh, God, yes. Well, all the cities.
Waterbury's,
The good thing about coastal is,
Have us sponsor it.
Yeah, and then we-
That's gonna get a lot more publicity from us.
the good thing about some of these coastal issues.
Everything is sort of.
It doesn't matter what people are thinking politically. When we tell them that Washington Street is closed for 100 days a year. they
Thank you,
say,
Kathy.
"Okay, that gets priority, we're gonna raise it, we'll get you the money, otherwise, no supply, it's going to be closed 100 days a year on normal sunny days in 7 years, yeah. Just because of the rising tide, unless somebody,
Out of business.
It's fine,
I mean, that waits for nobody, right? They don't care about politics.
Somebody, John something owned it.
John Harney.
Yes.
Years and years.
That was when I was around.
Bach bought it for 5 million, put 5 million in, sold it for 4. Largely, it's $5 million on the renovation there, and then then it was closed for about 2 years, and then it reopened about 6 years ago. With a consortium, including Jasper Johns and